What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cojones Show. I'm Angel Santiago. With me, as always, is Carl Jones, and today we got a Memorial Day themed episode because fuck it, why not? I'm hoping everybody's enjoying the long weekend. We'll get to that a little later. But Carl, my man, how you doing? How was your week?
I'm doing pretty good. Looking forward to starting my new job here on Monday. Got a new 9 to 5 lined up. Got my sleep schedule reset. Doing good, feeling good. How about you?
Yeah, pretty good, man. I actually, I've been busting my ass training for, I don't know if you've ever heard of the tactical games, but essentially it's like 3-gun shooting just with extra steps. So you have to like work out and shit like that, and then, you know, get on target and shoot and whatnot. So it's a bit of fitness along with target shooting and stuff. So I've been doing some workouts for that, and it's been kind of cool getting my head straight and whatnot. Just finding things that get my heart rate up has been a challenge. So whenever I find them, I try to grab on and never let go. So,
yeah, well, you just gotta do like me and be a lazy piece of shit, sit on your ass for a year, and then you can walk up the stairs and your heart rate will get up.
I've thought about it, man.
Yeah, don't do it. That's a joke. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, no, we did this really long workout. It was like a circuit of 12 different exercises, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off for 5 rounds. And it was, yeah, man, in the North Carolina heat, I drove down to a buddy's house. It was humid as shit, and it was a good time, man. You had to kind of like get in that right headspace, you know, where you're constantly trying to like kick that inner bitch down and make sure that you didn't find an excuse to quit. So it was good. It was good. It felt really good.
Sounds like HIIT training.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, all of it is really just you're doing intervals of things with minimal rest, and you're trying to keep your heart rate going, constantly moving and things like that. And we're trying to I have an opinion about CrossFit just in general, not necessarily against functional training, but more so just the culture and the community that CrossFit breeds a lot of times. But, you know, functional training and doing consecutive movements with minimal rest is a great way, and you know, to kind of build that cardio, build that mobility and stuff like that. So that's what we're going for. It was a really good time, man. And I think we're actually going to, I've been looking at you know, trying to figure out how we can incorporate some of that and actually do some shooting like in the middle. You know, we got to find the right spot and whatnot, somebody's property, to be able to actually like get a workout in, and then also do some target practice when we're in that heightened like heart rate level. Because it turns out shooting accurately when your heart rate is through the fucking roof is not as easy as it sounds. Even though everybody watched John Wick and they swear up and down they can do it too.
Oh yeah.
That's not how it works.
So I would tell a lot of those people to check out Pat McNamara on YouTube, and he's a guy he did a lot of we'll say operator stuff for a long time, and I love watching his videos on takedowns about range theatrics and shit like that. It's hilarious.
Yeah, man. It's funny how many of these weekend heroes out there. You know, hey, what better weekend to be a weekend hero, right? Memorial Day weekend. But yeah, dude, it's been fun. I actually, one of the things we were talking about before we even started rolling the camera was like some of the things we hate about Memorial Day. First and foremost, I will say, Memorial Day is, to me, it's an important holiday as a person, as an individual. I like to respect and remember the men and women that served before me, because if you ever served in the military, there's a long history associated with it, and whether you loved or hated your time in the military, it's kind of hard to deny the fraternity that you join when you're in the military. So the military is bigger than any one individual. There's a really long history, and for me as a person, I really do like to remember the men and women that came before me, and that ultimately, they paid the ultimate price. And obviously I was fortunate enough to not find myself in that position. So Memorial Day to me is a special holiday. But I will say there are plenty of things about Memorial Day that I hate, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the people out there barbecuing and drinking their beers and stuff like that. More power to you. Honestly, if that's how you want to celebrate Memorial Day, by all means, please drink a beer for me too. Pour one out for the homies. I don't really care what you want to do. Yeah. Just have a good time, man. Live your life. It's a free country, and that freedom was paid for by brave men and women. But the people that usually piss me off the most are vets like, you and I, that they take Memorial Day and they like to make it about themselves. And for those of you who are uninitiated, I guess here's a little secret about Memorial Day: is it's to remember the people who have died serving our country. So if there's a veteran out there claiming, something about Memorial Day, it turns out that this holiday has absolutely nothing to do with them. So that's kind of, I'll take a breath here to let you chime in, because you and I were having a pretty good discussion about this around all the guys that we see on social media a lot of times talking about what discounts they're getting or free meals they're getting from Chili's and Applebee's because, hey, they fought even though Memorial Day isn't even about them.
Yeah, Veterans Day is for the people who are still alive, right? That's when we honor those who have fought and worked to defend us, but are still alive, right? Mm-hmm. Memorial Day is for those who died, who did pay that ultimate price of sacrificing their lives, right? Because all military service comes with sacrifice. That's not deniable. But not all of us die 10,000 miles from home, breathing our last horrible breaths with no one who loves us anywhere near us. And that's why you want to at least tell those people thank you, whether or not you agree with anything they've ever done.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even have the ability to disagree with it had they not done that for you. And another big part of it, that we can bring up later is, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but also remember a lot of those people in the past, before Vietnam, and before that, they didn't have a choice. They got forced to go do that,
Yep.
All that aside, there's a lot of people out there, the things that I dislike the most, about Memorial Day personally, I try to remember it when I approach Memorial Day, like we were talking about before. I try to think about not just the sacrifice that was given, but the importance of, a quote unquote warrior caste of a military in society, and the value that a military gives to a society, because it is just a fact of history, that all the way until this day, basically everybody in the world appreciates the people who fight for them, and it's the military sect or warrior caste, however you want to put it, is incredibly important in society. So I take a lot of time to try to reflect on that and reflect on the value of a military to a society, and within that, how does the current society approach its military, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I dislike about what Memorial Day comes out to be a lot of the time now, specifically from bro vets and welfare queens, where they're out there sticking their hand out saying, "Tell me thanks." And number one, if you're one of those people, shut up, fix yourself. Just fix your fucking self.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, it just devalues the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's fine if you are alive celebrating Memorial Day and approaching it from a personal perspective of reflection, like, what does it mean to me based on my service, right? I think that's totally fine. But as soon as you externalize that as someone who's still alive, and you want to go talk, if somebody wants to come up to you and talk to you about what it means to be in the military or to have been in the military on Memorial Day, just remind them that it's about that sacrifice, and it's about losing your life. It's about giving that for something else that's bigger than you. And don't make it about you, because if you're alive, it's not about you. And then the other aspect of it is, I just feel like it really, there's this whole attitude these days. There's a lot of benefit, like we were talking about before. There's a lot of benefit to 20 years now of support the troops, support the troops, support the troops. But there's also some subtle, insidious side effects of it, mm-hmm. where it feels like we are commoditizing that sacrifice, where you have not just politicians, but people literally going out there and saying, "Here's what I did, gimme, gimme," and it's, I think not only does it, to me, the lesser side of that is that it's disrespectful to these people, to the men and women who have sacrificed their lives to try to give us some peace and some defense, and to protect our rights, protect our way of life. It's less so that it disrespects them, and more so that we are completely devaluing what a military means to a society.
So you just brought this up, where this was back in March, and this Marine apparently wrote, and can you see my screen?
Are you sharing it? Let me see.
Well, so I'm sharing it on Ecamm. So this Marine, anyway, he wrote this article, an op-ed, I think, to like Cambridge or some prestigious university in the UK, and essentially he's a Marine Corps veteran in the United States of America, writing a letter to Cambridge, asking them to help him pay for school. Now, again, for those of you who are unaware, if you serve in the military on active duty for 3 years consecutively, you're entitled to your full GI Bill benefits, right? And that's substantial. I paid for my MBA using my GI Bill, and it covered the entire thing, with the exception of a couple things that were program related that I had to pay for out of pocket, but really, really insignificant cost when you consider the overall expense, where top-notch MBAs are going to range anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 in tuition. So this Marine writes this letter, essentially just talking to Cambridge about how they should find a way to give him more financial incentive or financial benefits to be able to attend their school. Now, what's funny about this is that this guy is an American veteran asking another country, the losers of a war that we fought in we won't bring that up. Hey, we're friends now. But I'm just saying, like, you're asking another country to give a shit about your military service in your home country and asking them to find a way to help you pay for school. That highlights the extreme levels of this veteran entitlement that you were referring to, where again, the only entitlement that veterans should feel justified as far as education is concerned claiming is going to be things that are already stated by the U.S. government and their states, because those are promises that they were put in place before you even signed up, right? And these are things you go in there aware that they're there, right? Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with you expecting the things. It's a contract. It's as simple as that. I do this thing. I give you 6 years of my life, and you give me education benefits. That to me, that's completely, we're good to go, right? We're like that's healthy. Like, how else are you going to entice people to serve, right? Unless you want to start doing some type of forced service again. But this, show this article with this Marine writing a university, Cambridge, like, hey, you should care about my service in the American military, in the Marine Corps. You should care about my service, and then give me more money than I probably already got, or give me money at all. Treat me differently than anybody else, because your other students, like, hey, fuck those guys. But me, I don't want to get a student loan. Your school's expensive. You should give me this for free. That's highlighting the type of thing that we're talking about here. And Memorial Day, along with Independence Day and Veteran Day, have a tendency of bringing this out in a lot of people, because companies usually, whether or not their founders and their executives actually agree with any of this, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, you can only judge people by their actions. And companies want to show that they're supporting the military community by doing things like providing free meals or whatever today for active duty military and veterans, right? And that's really nice. Hey, if you're out and about and you feel like you want to go eat and it's Memorial Day and you're a veteran, hey, don't feel bad about it, right? They're offering by all means. But to expect it, right?
Yeah,
but to
demand more.
But to hold your hand out on some, like, please, sir, can I have some more? Like, that's some, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, well, and it's just so ugly, dude. Like, I don't know.
I think if you literally had to be a starving orphan about it, please, sir, may I have some more? If you had to do that, I think way more people would be too ashamed to ask for it. But because there's so much defense, there's so much social backing, support the vets. A comedian on SNL can't tell some goofy looking politician he looks like a goofy looking pirate with a fucking eye patch without the whole country jumping up his ass.
Now hold on. The situation with what's his name? It was Pete Davidson and Dan Crenshaw, right? Yeah. That whole situation was a little different, because I think he actually made a joke about like getting fucked in the eye hole or some shit. I don't remember. I might be talking out of my ass, but like he might have taken it a little too far. Just, again, look, hey, that aside.
Yeah, he probably would have made that. I'm almost sure that that Crenshaw, whatever his name was, I'm pretty sure he would have made that joke himself. Regardless,
Oh yeah.
I get it, right? There are certain things I think we can all agree. We've been pretending for a little too long that words can never be offensive. I think we should just get past that and move on to whether or not a different topic for a different day. We should move to whether or not being offended by something is grounds to change anything legally.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so Dan
Regardless,
Crenshaw, I think he lost his eye in an IED. That was the thing. And
uh,
then essentially, like, he's this comedian on a very public forum, right?
yeah,
Is mocking a veteran who lost his eye, right? So this is kind of I think society as a whole, going back to what we were saying, where there's a lot to be said about respecting the warrior caste in a society. I think
yeah.
people, they had this certain response when they heard that joke. And actually, Dan Crenshaw, he was the best sport about it, right? Like, he was just like, oh, hey man, look, if you want to talk about like my military service and stuff like that, we can. He wasn't whiny about it from what
Yeah.
I'm reading here on some of these articles and stuff like that. But definitely on Twitter, Pete Davidson got reamed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I know is I don't know. I guess for me, like, if you're, I don't know, it's a rough one. I guess looking at it from that perspective, maybe it's not okay to make fun of a guy who lost his eye, but at the same time, if he's literally a comedian, I think when you're literally a comedian doing a comedy act like SNL is supposed to be, they make it a little political sometimes, but when it's supposed to be a comedy act, I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah.
all that aside, right? I think we there's a lot of almost too much support, and I think that sort of becomes one of those things where we can talk about how, sometimes caring about something and recognizing the importance of it means that the respect you give to it comes at a certain level, and you want to talk about the tribute you pay to it comes at a certain value. And when we devalue it so much and it commoditizes it, I absolutely feel like I can sympathize with LGBT people who are upset by, like, because like right now Pride's going on. I guess it's Pride Month or something. I don't know. I don't like read too deep into that stuff. I don't know any gay people personally. Well, I guess that's not true. I do. Never mind. Maybe I should care about that. Anyway, they feel like a certain level of like they don't really like, they think it's kind of like gross, and they're trying to be bought when like big corporations buy into Pride Month, and it's like, it's obvious they don't care.
Yeah.
And to me,
Oh,
that's
let me change my profile picture to be a,
yeah, the
my
flag or
logo
whatever.
just in a rainbow.
Yeah, and like I can sympathize with that, because a lot of the time, like when I hear people talk about, oh, support the vets or whatever, a lot of the stuff that comes out of it is like, okay, but you don't care. It's okay that you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely, I don't think anybody should have to care, right? Any individual private U.S. citizen doesn't have to care. Part of the reason why some of these people died was so you had the right to not care if you didn't want to.
Yeah.
But I can still sympathize with that, as far as like it's there's this attitude approaching of it. It's like, it feels so much anymore like so many people, not just people with lots of money, politicians and people with agendas, but like the vets themselves. There's so many fucking welfare queens out there that are just trying to commoditize it and snatch up some social capital, get some, like we were saying before, some cheap nasty ribs from TGIF or some crap like that.
Yeah. Get some clout on this this Facebook comment that you made on somebody's post, and be like, I fought, and it's like, oh man, here's 100 likes for you. Yeah, dude.
It's one thing if you want to bring that up to try to speak from a position of authority. If someone's saying some dumb shit about like what it's like to be in combat or what it's like to be in the military, and you're like, well, actually, I'm a combat vet, and this is what it was like for me. That's way different than if somebody's just trying to like say something tangentially related, and you just come diving in like, I served, Like,
yeah, no, man. And it's funny because we see it all the time, right? We see it all the time, dude. Real quick, going back to this Pete Davidson, Dan Crenshaw situation, and this is to your point. The comment he made was that he looked like a hitman in a porno video, which if you're, look, in the 21st century, if we're wearing an eye patch, you 100% look like a hitman in a porno video. And that's totally fine. Comedians should be allowed to make fun of everything and everyone, because that's kind of, look, Pete Davidson, he's not funny. Like, this is the other thing. We're using comedian here loosely, but like, that's his job, is to try to get people to laugh. So he said, I know he lost his eye in war or whatever. That's the comment that really pissed people off, was like, in war or whatever. And there's an argument to be made for both sides. What I'm against in every single way is being hypersensitive about things that in the grand scheme of things are so unimportant. Where like Dan Crenshaw as a little kid, I'm sure was taught sticks and stones may break it, can break his bones, but words will never hurt him, kind of thing. If he was taught that as a little kid, then the rest of us should probably just back off, because the joke was directed at Dan Crenshaw. And if Dan Crenshaw can handle it with some grace, and and not call for Pete Davidson to get fired, which I don't think he did. I don't see that anywhere in the articles that I'm pulling up right now. Then like, the rest of people should kind of just shut the fuck up. And it's a lot of people who have probably served and stuff like that. And it's like, the disrespect to our military. It's like, yo, just chill the fuck out. Like, it's not that serious. It was a bad fucking joke. If the person that the joke was made about just doesn't care, why should we? Right. And I think that we've kind of reached this point in our society where there are lots of people who have worn the uniform while they were wearing the uniform, did absolutely nothing but bitch, did absolutely nothing but complain, did absolutely
hated every second
nothing
of it.
but hate every second of their lives, and made sure that every person around them knew and was aware of how they felt. And then when they take off their uniform, they get that DD-214. Now all of a sudden, they turn into fucking John Wayne from some bullshit movie or whatever, where like, they're all about America. They're all about, like, look at this hero coming through. He fought. But what people don't know, what people don't see, is like, well, this guy was actually a shitbag while he was in, and that's fine. That's totally fine. If you hated your military service, that's fine. But then don't pretend like you didn't when it's convenient for you. Or when there's like a free hamburger on the fucking line, like, cause then you just look bad, and that speaks volumes of your character. If like on all these fucking posts of Memorial Day, or just in your regular everyday life, you're, after bashing, your branch of service for 15 years, for 20 years, for 6 years, whatever, after bashing it for that long, then you come out here and it's like, oh yeah, I'm proud to be a blank. It's like, man, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
And that's
if you're
that's
kind of
the problem. Like,
if you're the kind of person that was hanging out with people that you liked, and they started talking shit on the military, and you would join in on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, do not show up talking about I served. Fuck off. You know?
Yeah. And look, there's a level, right, where anybody who's worn a uniform has a right to criticize the organizations that they were a part of, and to criticize the large bureaucracy that is the Department of Defense, because there's a ton that even the most patriotic individual can say, that's some bullshit, right? There's a ton of situations like that. There's definitely some room for that. But if the complaints that you have caused you to lose sight of what the uniform meant, of why you signed up, of why you're even here in the first place, if you lost sight of all of that because of the bureaucratic nonsense that you had to deal with, then you definitely don't have, I don't think you don't have any right to come out on Memorial Day, especially if you're still alive. But definitely Independence Day and Veterans Day, coming out here saying some shit like you fought. It's like, you should probably just sit your ass down. Like, I mean, if ribs are really worth your dignity, by all means, like, make sure they're good ribs, at least. Like,
definitively.
Fuck,
yeah. No, and that's, I don't know, I think that's really the biggest thing with it, is that I have no problem with criticizing it. I hated my time in the service. I have nothing but critical things to say about about being in the U.S. military by 2021. I don't try to convince anybody to go to it. I've literally told, young people, try to sell drugs first. Like, it's legal in some places now.
I don't know that I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I see
but,
where I hear you. I hear you.
So I've been nothing but critical of it.
Have you tried selling meth? That's
yeah. Hey, I'm just saying it's legal in some states now. All I'm saying, you could be an entrepreneur. You don't have to join the military. Just grow pot in California. It's literally a weed, dude. Like, and city kids are stupid. They don't know what they're buying. You could sell it for anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Oregano.
Fucking skunk ass weed for $100 an ounce. Anyway, you could, like, I am super critical of it. And there was a very brief point in time when, right after I got out of the military, it was the only thing I had done as an adult, and it was the only identity I had besides being a kid that I could do anything with. Like, it was the only thing I knew. And as I have progressed away from that, so like there was a long time where, like, literally if I had to introduce myself to somebody, the only thing I could tell them was I was in the Air Force, because that's the only thing I had done.
Yeah.
Now that I've done other shit, and the only reason it comes up is because I live in an area where there's a lot of veterans. I live in an area where there's a lot of people who are still serving, that it helps to have that connection with people. So I just throw it out there real quick as part of an introduction. Yep, I served for 6 years. I did that, and that's it. I don't, and I'm not saying that you have to not care about it. I'm not saying you do have to care about it. What I'm saying, I'm not saying you can't criticize it. I'm not saying you have to criticize it. What I'm saying is stick to your guns.
Yeah, be consistent.
And be consistent. If you liked it, you can like it. If you hated it, it's fine to later on decide, you know what, maybe it wasn't so bad, but don't sit around pretending like you were fucking Johnny Appleseed, super patriot, mega soldier the whole time.
You get out of an abusive relationship, and 10 years later, you're thinking back about the motherfucker that used to beat you fondly. Like, chill out, right? You look kind of dumb.
The Air Force screamed at me a lot, but man, did it have good dick. No, move on. Like,
right? God damn, dude. Yeah, man, it's funny. I see it happening quite a bit. We see it all the time. I've seen people that like retire, and they retired. They were the types of people that did the bare minimum while they were in, and literally just tried to, like, skate. Once they made E6, they were like, yo, I just got to skate by, because you can hit that, high tenure and stuff like that. And, like, as long as you don't get an Article 15 or some nonsense, like, you're good to retire at E6. And like,
I just E5 now, but regardless,
Jesus Christ. But either way, right? Like, just to highlight the point here, there's a lot of people that after the fact like to kind of twist things, and we all do it in aspects of our lives and areas of our lives where we look back at our past and we're like, man, I wish things would have gone this way. So we start kind of in our head, right? You start changing the narrative around a little bit. Maybe a bully used to pick on you, and when you tell the story later on, like, you stood up to the bully or whatever have you. But when there are people that you're friends with on Facebook that can see and could like remember and be like, damn, this motherfucker being inconsistent as hell. That, like, you just look funny, man. You look funny. Yeah. So think twice if you're one of those bro vets that are out here wearing jean shorts, carrying the American flag, smashing a natty ice on your head. Like, just think twice, right? Memorial Day is not about you. If you hated the time that you were in the military, like, keep that same energy. Don't fucking sacrifice your dignity and your character for some hot wings, because we're watching you, and, like, a lot of us, we remember you, and like, you're not a hero. And it's to civilians who are watching this, right? Like, if you're like, hey, I like to thank people for their service. Look, I like, we appreciate it, but it makes us uncomfortable. A lot of times we don't know what to say. And again, Memorial Day is not about us, so you shouldn't be thanking me for my service. And the possibility or the likelihood that I could have died in the military is not a reason to make this day about me. Because today is not about me. Today is about the men and women that paid that price that I fortunately didn't have to. On Veterans Day, if you want to be like, hey, thank you for your service, I'm gonna hit you with the thank you right back. and keep it moving. Like, I'm not special. I joined the military because I wanted to serve my country. That was actually my only motivator. I had a job in mind that I wanted to do in the military. That was my only motivation. But I'll tell you, it was a voluntary decision. Nobody forced me. Nobody coerced me. I am not a hero. And again, like, I'm different from you, whereas I would go back and do it again in a heartbeat. Like, I enjoyed my time in the military, and I've actually thought about, since being out, I've thought about going back in. But I don't, the hero worship aspect of it that our society has kind of shifted to, it makes me really uncomfortable, and like, it's just not for me.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. It took me a long time. There was a very brief moment where, like, when people would thank me after I got out, and I would like kind of react negatively, and I would tell them like, "Hey, man, like don't thank me, and don't be so like predisposed to thank people, because there's so many of us that don't want to be thanked for what we did because we're not proud of it, because it's not a proud career a lot of the time. It's not honorable service a lot of the time. A lot of it's not, but I moved past that. I understand they're not thanking me personally. They're thanking the military, and I am a representative of what that means. So, like, it took me a while to learn the grace to be able to just say, "Hey, thank you for the support," and move on. But yeah, I mean, I'm opposite in a lot of the ways. I joined because I was poor and didn't have really any other option, right? I wanted to go to school, couldn't afford it. Couldn't even, like, was so poor, couldn't even afford to get a student loan. Didn't really have any other option. It was the best bet I had. I wanted to start a life. I was looking at marrying a girl. I wanted to be able to support her, have a family. That's why I did it. That's why the whole time I was in, I never pretended to be anything but that guy. I was always very proud and respectful to meet the people who told me straight up, like, "Oh yeah, I joined to serve," but those were few and far between. And I'm never going to hide it from anybody that I joined to get benefits, and that I pieced out as soon as, like, I got, when I fulfilled my side of the contract, I pieced out to get what I signed up for, and that was it,
And we talked about this, right? Where, like, we would never shame anybody in any other profession for getting a job for money and benefits. Like, that's literally what everybody else does, is you start working for someone so that they pay you and you have medical benefits. Like, those are the two driving factors for most people. So the military is really, in a lot of ways, no different. So I personally don't feel negatively towards people who say, "Well, I joined the military to get the GI Bill," or "I joined the military for a paycheck," or "I joined the military to to see the world," and then you end up in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, you're stuck in fucking San Antonio for 11 years.
Like, I don't look at those people negatively, because it's a social contract like any other. It's a job like any other. For some people, it turns into a career, right? But you don't have to be one of those people. And like, that's why, just be honest about it, and then be consistent.
And the other thing on that too, in my personal experience, the only people who really harp on, like, but I did it to serve, or the people who really get up their ass about who's trying to delineate who's a welfare queen and who isn't, not based off of, are you actually a welfare queen because your hand stuck out, or did you not join to serve, and, like, did you not fight and all that stuff while you're in, and you were just, like, in logistics or something like that. The only people who are really hung up on that are themselves dirtbags. To the one, every single one of them, the guys who are really, really hung up on whether or not, like, why you joined, they're just looking for a way to make themselves feel better about being a dirtbag. So, like, it's not something to care about. All that matters is, did you serve honorably while you were there? That's it.
Yeah. And like, honorable service is, like, did you do all of the things you had to do while you were in? And like, your DD-214 will 100% tell the world, like, whether or not you served honorably or not. And, at least on paper, right? People who served around you might have a different opinion, but ultimately, man, that shouldn't matter. And if you look back at your military service and it's not what you wanted it to be, then maybe talk about it a little less. Instead of trying to alter your past and your history by taking on different emotions and trying to project something that just isn't the truth, like, just don't bring it up, right? If it comes up in conversation, bring it up in passing and let it go. People grow, people change. I knew the Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, the last one, I think he talked about how he wasn't a very good He wasn't a very good airman for, from E1 to E4. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously things changed, and he ended up becoming the highest enlisted rank in the Air Force. And people change, right? So if you decided to get out and you grew up and you matured, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, hey, when I was in the military, I was a dirtbag, and that's not me
Yeah.
anymore. Like,
Yeah.
that's cool too.
Just be honest about it. Like, that's the other thing too. Be honest about what you did and didn't do, right? Like, I think that's something that comes from a lot of people who wind up like that are probably ashamed of the fact that they were dirtbags. You want to know how you get over that shame? Be honest about it. Don't be proud about it. There's a difference between being honest and being proud about it. But if you're just honest about it, people will be like, you know what, at least you're honest, and they'll respect you for that. I don't know how many people I tell all the time, like, yeah, I was a fucking shitbag the last 3 years I was in. The first 3 years I tried real hard, and then the bureaucracy steamroller got me. And I legitimately stopped giving a shit because where I was not a good spot, and I knew I was getting out. I knew that I was a one and done guy. I wasn't going to try to make a career out of this shit. So I surfed the last 3 years. I did what was required of me. I didn't shoot above that, and I got out, and that's it. Just be honest about it. I'm not proud that that's the way I went out. I'm not proud about it at all, but that's what happened,
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, I feel you. For me, it was a little different, right? Like as soon as I realized I couldn't do the job that I wanted to do, I was like, I'm not going to stick around. And because my heart just wasn't in it. I was like, I'm not going to stick around and do this thing that is going to make me unhappy. So I made the decision to get out in like 15 seconds. It's like, you're telling me there's no chance, zero chance I'm going to be able to do this? All right, cool. I'm getting out. So it's either way, dude. I think that Memorial Day, it's a good holiday. I enjoy it. This is something that I've talked about with some of my friends. This is something that comes up every once in a while, right? Where you go through your life and you don't realize that some of the things that exist in society and in the culture are so much bigger than you, and they're so ingrained that you rarely ever stop to think about why do these things even exist. And Memorial Day is one of those holidays that does have a deeper meaning to it. So if you're out there barbecuing, there's nothing wrong with it. Please, by all means, barbecue. Cook something delicious. It's raining here, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything. But have a good time. If you're somebody who was social distancing up until now because you were waiting for the CDC, number one, I feel sorry for you. And number two, by all means, live it up, right? Do your thing. Don't let fucking veterans or anybody else for that matter guilt trip you into not enjoying your life because it's like, oh, remember the fallen. It's like chill the fuck out. Have a great time. But if you have time, take a second and just try to remember what Memorial Day is all about. Now, what I just said, by the way, is only directed at the everyday citizen, because this next part of the conversation that I wanted to get into is around Kamala Harris. Now, I don't normally get upset about words, right? If someone says something, especially a celebrity or something, I don't really put any weight to it. And I have zero respect for politicians. I have zero respect for the Biden administration. I think I've made that very clear to anybody who knows me. I don't think there's a whole lot to respect. That said, Kamala Harris came out yesterday and she sent out a tweet. And the tweet was very simple. Enjoy the long weekend, period. So full stop. Enjoy the long weekend, full stop. Mm-hmm. All right. And when I saw this, for some reason, I had this just visceral, it was strange. It was strange. And I wasn't really sure why I was so upset. I read the tweet over and over, and I was like, why is this bothering me so much? And because I don't think that veterans need to be worshipped. I don't think that, I think that our military, the Department of Defense, has become extremely bloated. There's a ton of fat that we can afford to trim. There are things that are happening that taxpayers are not aware of. Fraud, waste, and abuse is rampant in the Department of Defense. There's plenty wrong and that can be fixed. So I'm not that type of person who's just blind, right, to the reality of the situation. But I read her tweet and I was like, enjoy the long weekend. I'm like, this bothers me. And I started thinking about it. It's like we have to kind of delineate the everyday citizen and someone who could potentially fall smack dab at the top of the chain of command. Because for those of you who are unaware, Kamala Harris technically isn't in the chain of command, right? It's president, then Secretary of Defense, then it's the Secretary of the Service, right? So the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and then it's going to be, you know, your generals. She's, as vice president, she could, for whatever reason, be acting in that capacity if anything were to happen to the president. So it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And for her to come out and say, enjoy the long weekend, and not even acknowledge Memorial Day, it made me mad, because I think that at the very least, a politician who might ultimately be responsible for the system, a politician who's supposed to be embodying the values of Americans, a politician who's supposed to be representing us, should at the very least pretend to care. And it seems like she doesn't even feel like hiding it anymore, just her contempt for the military, and her contempt for a lot of the establishments in American civilization. So I want to hear your take, man. We were talking about this a little bit, but this shit had me riled up.
Yeah, I know. As soon as I saw it, because I saw the tweet, and as soon as I saw it, like the very first thing I thought was like, you fucking idiot. But then I moved on. You know, it didn't, like, I was like, wow, that's stupid to have said it like that, and then moved on. I know, you know, the thing I want to make clear here, the thing that I thought was kind of what about it, I was like, did she mean to send this internally and put it in a tweet instead of in her Outlook box or something? Because that, like, when we were in, we can, if you're being honest, that's the kind of like sentiment you have about it when you're in the military, right? And a lot of government people, well, not the civilians, but a lot of people who work DOD, a lot of guys in uniform, that's kind of the sentiment you have about it. But you don't express it openly. And because something that I think people like get really confused about, because they have sort of like a simple approach to social issues. They have too simple of approach, too individual of approach. Sometimes you have to pretend things are important, because they are important, and we realize that day to day it doesn't affect us. Mm-hmm. Day to day in our individual lives, the existence of the United States military has very little direct impact on any of us, besides how much money is being spent at a federal level, right? Day to day in our individual lives, this shit probably doesn't matter to the vast majority of us, unless you are actively serving, or you are someone who's been injured and you're trying to be on VA disability, right? That's about the only people it affects. Mm-hmm. But because it's so much bigger than any of us individually, and across the entire lifespan of hopefully our nation will go on for a very long time, you know, and the United States of America won't die at 300 years old or something like that. Hopefully humanity and nations that exist now can continue on for much longer. It's so much bigger than us individually. You shouldn't express how little it affects you personally as the primary sentiment. You should be willing to look beyond yourself and recognize that this is important to all of us, and it was important historically, and it will continue to be important for generations to come. Yeah. And that is what you pay respect to. You don't look at how it affects you individually. You have to pay respect to the importance of how much bigger this is. So when we say pretend to care, really what you should focus on is like, yeah, we can admit that that's what it feels like individually, but you should have a broad enough perspective to recognize the importance of this across generations for history to come, you know, because it's bigger than just, that's the big thing about this. It's bigger than us individually.
Then the other thing, man, that like really it stuck out to me was that if you've been living in the United States for the past 20 years, it is impossible to have avoided the support our troop feelings that exist, right? The support the troops feelings that just exist in society. Kamala Harris hasn't been living under a rock. She's a power-hungry politician like all the other ones. She is willing to say and do anything to get clout, to get votes, to get whatever it is. Like, you know, like saying she celebrates Kwanzaa. Like, no, you fucking don't. But anyway. for someone like her, who's willing to say and do anything to get support, to make sure that she's being voted for, this wasn't a mistake.
Yeah.
We all know what Memorial Day weekend is for. A politician at her level knows exactly what Memorial Day weekend is about. And I'm sure that she's made similar Memorial Day weekend addresses at some point in her career, because that's just what politicians do. I think this is really just her feeling like she doesn't have to hide her contempt. Like, she doesn't care. She literally does not care about this. So she's just like, enjoy the long weekend.
Yeah.
And I know some people might be like, no, you're just reading into it, because she did, after the fact, today, at 7 a.m, came out and she put out another tweet, essentially doing the typical, hey, men and women,
what you're supposed to do,
what you kind of expected with the first one.
Yeah, I don't care if it's just some road caption parody thing that your speechwriter threw together in 20 seconds before you shotgunned it out.
It's exactly what this is, bro. Like, this is, I mean, and that's fine. That is totally fine. Like, had she sent this out yesterday, nobody would have said anything about anything. It wouldn't have been a thing. But to acknowledge the long weekend without even pretending to acknowledge what the weekend is about, by the vice president of the United States of America, because I don't want people to misunderstand where I'm coming from. If this was Joe from down the road who said, hey, everybody, enjoy the long weekend, I wouldn't give a shit. I would not care. What? Cool, Joe, you too. Not a big deal. Hey, you doing anything, barbecuing with the family? Like, that's the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The vice president of the United States, number one, knows better, and number two, needs to act different. Right. So the fact that she can acknowledge that there's a long weekend, but just does not care about why, it's kind of like flipping a bird to all of the people who actively care about this, which it turns out anyone who's actively in a uniform, Memorial Day weekend. I remember a lot of times before, right, during the safety brief, we would usually get a little bit of a spiel about what Memorial Day was about, reminding people, right? There was usually some type of an email that would go out letting people know, like, hey, look, as we're coming up on in the middle, a lot of times we would get 4-day weekends for this and whatever have you, like usually something about like, hey, this is what Memorial Day is all about. Base was usually doing something specifically for Memorial Day. So there was, while internally the conversations were usually in passing, right? And it was usually always just, hey, enjoy the long weekend. Where are we going to get drunk? The community as a whole had a lot more going on to remember, for Memorial Day. So that said, at the vice president, the vice president of the United States not caring, showing general like contempt around Memorial Day, the men and women that died, right? And we alluded to this earlier. Sometimes people forget that Memorial Day has nothing to do with the veterans that unless they died, has nothing to do with the veterans from the War on Terror. This has to do with all people who served in the military who have died. The vast majority of those people came from previous wars where the death tolls were through the roof, and tons of those people were forced to serve. They didn't have a choice. So they truly,
and many of them didn't want to.
And a lot of them didn't want to. So they truly paid the ultimate like that. They made the ultimate sacrifice, man. Like that if you were drafted and like, of course you're going to be unhappy because there go your plans, right? But you were drafted, you wore the uniform, you went out and you fought. Like, those are the people we're remembering, is that all of the things that we benefit from in society today, they came at a price. They came from decisions that were made by our government, by our society. And we said, all right, these are the things we're going to value. Whether I had a buddy whose grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, and he passed recently. I have other friends whose grandfathers were either fought in Korea or in World War II. My grandfather fought in Korea, and he's still alive. But you get what I'm saying? It's like for my friends whose grandfathers died, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the people we're looking back to, because these wars were different. In like World War II, nobody's going to argue that like World War II was something we needed to fight.
Yeah. even taken away from the something you want to fight perspective, right? Um, with the not to go too sideways real quick, but just some context here. When the Parkland shooting happened, right, and those kids from there got kind of famous for being able to speak very eloquently and very charged about it, right? And David Hogg made, I forgive him for it because he was young, but when David Hogg said we're the only generation who grew up under the threat of an AR-15 or something like that, right? At a conversation with a Vietnam vet a few years ago. We were working together. We were both security guards, and when you are both veterans, you make connections because of that. And we were talking about it, and he just started talking to me about how much it sucked because he was a Vietnam vet.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing he said that stuck out to me the most was just out of nowhere, he hit me with this. We're just sitting there at the desk, and he goes, none of us had dreams because we knew what was going to happen. We were going to go to Vietnam and die. None of us had dreams when we graduated high school. Our lives were over because we knew what was going to happen. If we weren't going to college, we knew what was going to happen. That's who you're trying to pay respect to, is generations back of people who had this horrific shadow of compulsory service placed on their head. Yeah. So for the vice president of the United States to just sort of be like, and not even like enjoy, because like even if she had just picked a few different words, because like even when we were in the military, and it was so often it was enjoy your 4-day weekend. So just totally detaching it from the people, the 4-day weekend, just the whole thing of it.
Enjoy the long weekend.
Yeah, enjoy the long week. Just like completely detaching it from that aspect of sacrifice and from the people themselves. It's just sort of like, okay, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, get it. You hate this. That's cool.
Yeah.
You shouldn't
I'll pull this up. I know you can't see it on your end, but I'll pull it up. And, essentially, Kamala Harris pays tribute to vets after taking heat for earlier Memorial Day tweet. And it's at 7:00 in the morning. She talks about throughout our history, service member, whatever, given that canned statement. But then, it has examples of her getting roasted on Twitter just for a headshot of herself. Mm-hmm. Like it's her goofy ass looking off into the distance with "enjoy the long weekend," and like that's, hey, all right, cool. And to me, again, dude, I it's one of those things. It's almost like people who get forced to apologize.
Yeah.
Right.
It's one of those. It's one of those things that's like what do you call it? Those streamers, the video game players or whatever, they get caught dropping some racial slur, and then afterwards they're like, "I'm so sorry that I said the bad word. I have to work on myself." And it's just like, okay, it's fine that you don't care.
Right. So like she didn't even acknowledge the fact that she's like, hey, I don't know if people would have respected this more or not, right? But she just kind of pretended like the earlier tweet didn't happen, like the outrages didn't happen, right? She was just like, hey, here's my obligatory Memorial Day tweet, so to satisfy the Patriots. Like it's just it
quell
was
the mob.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because again when I read that, even like corporate Fortune 500 companies, like when directors, VPs, and the CEO they drop some on a long weekend like this, especially Memorial Day and Veterans Day in particular, they usually preface it, right, by saying something along the lines of what the day is for.
Yeah.
And like, so if a Fortune 500, if a private company or a public company can do that, can take the time and say, hey, shouldn't we expect the same attention to detail from the Vice President of the United States of America? Like, shouldn't we demand that at the very least? Yeah. And I hope I'm not being hypersensitive. I really, because again, I think that I've made it clear that if you're watching this and you're like, I don't give a shit about Memorial Day, that's totally fine with me. I don't care. If for you Memorial Day is nothing more than a 3-day weekend, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Enjoy it. If you do care a little bit, I would encourage you to look into what Memorial Day is all about. But for the Vice President of the United States, someone, I'm sure Kamala Harris has aspirations to be more than just a footnote in history. So for her to right? Like it was weird.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you're
I
being.
think it was intentional. Like I
It's
personally think it
definitely
was
intentional.
intentional.
If it's not intentional, it's sort of one of those situations where it's like you kind of have to hope it's intentional, because if it's not intentional, like that's a very stupid person
Yeah.
up there leading our country. So you kind of almost have to just hope it's intentional, and then hope that you can catch them out and get them to change their shitty attitude about stuff. But if that's not intentional, that's a particularly stupid person. I think, as far as being hypersensitive, sort of like what we talked about before, we just spent 4 years learning that the president should just shotgun stupid shit out on Twitter.
Mm.
Um, Regardless of whether or not you like that, that's the actual take on it. That's just the reality of it. You shouldn't just shotgun stupid shit out on Twitter. You should run it through. Not everybody's a fantastic public speaker. You have staff, you have people who assist you with this, right? And if you're sitting there saying, I'm sure there's some liberal right now who is looking at people being upset by this, playing some whataboutism horseshit of, well, Trump did XYZ thing. Shut the fuck up about it. If it's a dumb thing to just shotgun a brainless opinion out on Twitter from a public position, it's a dumb thing. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You would hope, to me, that's really the biggest thing about it, is that for somebody who like literally ran an election campaign on, well, I'm not that guy. Okay, well, you didn't learn anything. So, and that if you did learn something and you're choosing to do it anyway, like, I don't know. The whole thing's nasty. I don't think it's being hypersensitive at all. I think if you wanted, I think the hypersensitivity is to go out there and be like, oh, we have to impeach Kamala Harris if she said this. I don't think anybody's saying that. No. That's hypersensitivity, though. I think, I don't know. I know as somebody who looked at it and was like, wow, that's fucking stupid. Like, for me, I know you go back a few years, right, when flag burning was more popular. I was never really deeply upset by flag burning. If somebody had pulled my flag down and burned it, I'd be like, yo, that's my flag. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But I was never like deeply upset about it, and I support anybody's right to protest within reason, right? If separate argument, if you're labeling rioting as protesting, nah. But I support anybody's right to protest. You want to burn a flag, whatever, go nuts. But I also understand that a lot of people get upset about it for very good reasons and for very meaningful reasons. And it's sort of in the same boat here. When I saw it, my initial knee-jerk reaction was, that's fucking stupid. But if somebody had a more visceral response to it, I perfectly understand it. Because like I said, you're looking at, like, for me, the thing that I think of when I see people disrespect Memorial Day specifically, even though this man survived, is, this Vietnam vet I knew literally telling me that his whole high school class was hopeless for the future because they knew what they were going to do was to go die in a war.
Yeah.
And you just shit on that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think of when I think of that stuff. So even though, like I said, it's bigger than us individually. So even if that's her actual opinion, she needs to recognize that even as the vice president, and she holds a very high position of authority, and what she says is important, even if it's her personal opinion, she needs to understand that she speaks to a greater audience, and that these things are bigger than us individually. They're bigger than one election cycle. They're bigger than one entire generation of people, as it turns out. It's the whole country for as long as we're going to be here.
Yeah. And what's funny, man, is that I'm not usually, well, so the thing is I'm not very sensitive about a lot of the things that happen, right? So a while back, she boarding a plane, right? Didn't salute. And to me, like, tons of people got mad. You have the honor guard or whomever there, right? And they're saluting, and then she didn't salute or whatever. And
she's a civilian; she doesn't have to.
Well, so like that's the thing, right? There's no protocol requiring that she render customs and courtesies, right? Like that's just not a thing. But you see other examples. I'm not sure if Pence saluted or not. But
I think Reagan started it anyway.
Yeah. But. So like but either way, right? So like you see something like that where people kind of they highlight, oh, she didn't salute, and you're like, whatever. And then you put this tweet in that same context, and all of a sudden these actions kind of take on a new, like her actions take on new meaning. Because if these were two isolated events, then you could say, oh, it's not a big deal, whatever, honest mistake. Or it could really just highlight the fact that the contempt that she has towards the military, which I think is probably closer to the truth.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's alarming to me, especially someone like her. I mean, she's a pathological liar like most politicians, and she definitely has aspirations I mean, she's probably praying for something bad to happen. She's got aspirations for her political future, I'm sure.
Regardless of that, like I said earlier,
she'll run. She's relatively
she's a Democratic
young.
vice president. She's going to run for president.
Yeah. And I mean, she's probably gonna, I don't know. We'll see. But I think that it's just something that, yeah, man, it might be highlighting a potential shift in our society towards the attitudes of the attitudes that people have in society towards the military, where we spent the past 20 years being, essentially overcorrecting the wrongs that we did post Vietnam, which those guys, I mean, I feel for them. I've gotten a chance to talk to quite a few Vietnam vets, and the treatment that they got was absolutely atrocious. And then you compare that to the lavish red carpet treatment that most of these fucking bro vets fucking expect when they're applying to a college in a different fucking country, where like you're entitled to some bullshit. I think it's this overcorrection that happened. And I think that in some ways people are just, maybe they're tired, right? Maybe they're just saturated and just like, look, I'm done with this. I don't even see the point. I forget that there's still troops in the Middle East, like whatever have you. And that's a consequence of doing way too fucking much.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a correction that needs to happen.
Definitely.
Because it's right. Like you're going back to a good balance where like, we need people who are willing to sacrifice their freedom so that as a society, we can maintain our freedom, right? We need people who are willing to sacrifice portions of their lives for our military, for service in the military. Like that needs to happen. That will always need to happen. That's been happening forever. When we were fighting with sticks and stones, we were doing that too, where there was a group of guys that were just the guys that would handle the lion that got into the camp and shit like that. Like things, it's the same thing. But the hero worship, like that needs to get toned down. The expectation, that mentality that a lot of veterans have, that shit needs to get corrected.
Definitely.
What I'm afraid of, however, is that usually how corrections happen is there's an overcorrection. And this hero worship then turns into active hostility, and we're back to the Vietnam era type treatment, and then we have to wait another couple of decades for that to correct itself. Another war and another couple of decades for that to correct itself, and it's a little concerning when I see, because if you're on TikTok, if you're on like Instagram and stuff like that, there have been things, more anti-military things that I have seen lately than I had seen since the advent of social media, right? Yeah. Where like people are becoming bolder and bolder with their extreme opinions. And I put extreme because they're outliers, right? They fall outside what we would consider the social norm. And it seems like videos are going viral, not necessarily for negative reasons, but they're saying extremely negative things. And again, in quotes, depending on what position or opinion you have. It's a little alarming, a little concerning.
Like
I'm curious to see where this will go.
I definitely don't have a problem with someone, being critical of the military-industrial complex and being too concerned about the United States being like the global police. I don't have a problem if that's your concern. But when you're like some 16-year-old on Twitter or TikTok talking about don't become a dog of Israel, like shut up. Just be quiet. Like you're so stupid.
But it's so like, dude, but take a second and think about it. Go back 15 years. How many 16-year-olds were willing to say that openly in a public forum?
Well, so 15 years ago, right? I think if you want to be very specific about it, in 2006,
Mhm.
When we had really only been involved in the Middle East for a few years at that point, it was much more common. For me, the history of it, it didn't get to the point where it was like you couldn't criticize the military until like 2010, 2011, when we'd been at it for almost a decade and we were starting to pull out a lot anyway, where then really the sentiment became like if you say literally anything against these people. And that's also when the sentiment changed from like you can criticize the government, but you have to support the troops individually and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
So
don't know. I have a different either way, right? I think that we can agree that
mhm.
if the time frame was a decade, 15 years, 20 years,
Yeah,
whatever, there was a point in recent history
yeah,
where like you wouldn't see a teenager have this opinion openly and publicly. Now, again, an argument could be made that maybe the technology wasn't there and these little assholes just didn't have a platform to do it. But
yeah,
hey, MySpace was around, Facebook was around, things like that, and the sentiment was usually pretty positive towards the
yeah.
military itself. Like I knew people who were anti-war, but they
Hmm.
never took that out on the individual service member.
Yeah,
Where now I feel like attacks on individuals who are serving in the military, not the fight, right? It's on
hmm.
the individual serving
Yeah.
have become pretty
More
common, and
common.
I've seen them, and I don't know if it's like if it's the algorithm just throwing me content that it thinks I would either love or hate.
Hmm.
Um, but it's something that I'm seeing with a little more frequency than I'm comfortable with, and it's like, damn, like this 16-year-old is then going to grow up to become a screeching 30-year-old
Hmm.
who like just has this unrealistic worldview,
Yeah.
um, dyes their hair a ridiculous color, has an unrealistic worldview, and contributes very little to society. And obviously, I'm whatever. But you get what I'm saying. It's like these
Yeah.
people eventually grow up, and they don't
Hmm.
always grow up the right way, right? They don't always mature because they will always grow up, but they won't always mature. And I think
Hmm.
that like maturing is a process where you're like, okay, this is a complex issue that can't be that I can't just scream about on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's maturing. Growing up is simply saying, well, now I can vote. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
18 now. Like now I can vote. Like,
Yeah.
and that
I
scares me.
definitely, and I think I think if you look at U.S. history, we have this cycle that repeats of overcorrecting
Yep.
in one direction or the other. If we're aware of this, let's become aware of it and let's try to stop it, right? Sort of like the same way that sort of the same comment you made earlier that I'm sure some people are thinking about, right? Talking about how violence will exist in perpetuity. We'll never get away from needing violence. That is unfortunately true,
Hmm.
right? That doesn't mean there's two things that play into this, right, that make it complex. It doesn't mean that we should never seek peaceful solutions and that we shouldn't seek to make society more peaceful. Every good soldier loves peace and hates warfare. But at the same time, right, if someone's trying to actively harm you, you can't, I mean, you absolutely can just say, hey, I'm peaceful. I don't want to fight. You can be totally passive about it. Just understand you'll die, and then
Hmm.
only violent, hateful people will have control of the world. Right?
Hmm.
That's the paradox of intolerance. So if you want to have a peaceful war, or a peaceful world, you have to prepare for war. It's a very old saying, and it holds true to this day. It'll hold true forever. It's just an
Forever.
unfortunate reality. We can make the
Yep.
world as peaceful as we want. There will still be a need for violent people to
Yep.
do violent things to other violent people.
Yeah, yeah.
Regardless
And I
of
mean,
all that,
strength is a deterrent, right? Like,
yeah,
so either way, there is a good
yeah,
argument to be made. I know a lot of people are anti-standing military, right?
mhm,
But there's a good argument to be made that strength is a deterrent, where you have to be in this constant state of posture, because when there are other people out there, which
yeah,
there are, again, fucking China, like,
yeah. Well, a lot of people don't pay attention to the history, right? Like everybody is very keen and very aware of the U.S.'s, we'll call it what it is, war hawking that has been going on for the last several decades here. They don't know the history or conveniently don't bring it up of how the reason why we have this stance and things like the Monroe Doctrine exist and all this is because post-World War II, after we just stopped one military power from trying to take control of the entire world, Russia quickly invaded basically
mhm,
all of Eastern Europe and stole it and literally built a wall across Germany
mhm,
and said, this is ours now. and they were trying to expand that influence.
Mhm.
So when people like to go, I've seen this picture float around talking about, oh, look at how violent and militaristic Russia is. They put their country around all of these military bases, these U.S. military bases, right? Like, oh, okay, whatever, right? It's trying to say it's the U.S. who are the ones that are being, overly aggressive in that situation. But again, you don't know the history of how that was a response to Russia literally stealing half of Europe post World War II, and then doing exactly what a lot of people criticize the U.S. for doing now, without paying attention to the fact that other forces, Russia and now China, have been doing things like spreading political influence, selling weapons, training militaries, destabilizing countries to try to spread their side of things. And it's very, the ironic part about that, if it wasn't for the fact that we are so free and open in the United States, and that our country and that our government is as relatively translucent as it is, we wouldn't even know this stuff. The whole reason why so many people are unaware that Russia and China have even been doing this stuff is because if you're a dissident and you try to talk about it, they kill you. And in America, we make you a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist.
Yeah.
All that stuff aside, right?
Yeah.
To sort of, to get off the tangent and bring it back, you want to have a posture, you want to show strength, not just to resist external influence, right? But a point that we talked about before we got going on this, another big reason why you need to pretend to care, recognize it's bigger than all of us, right? This holds throughout history. And sort of like I said before, it's true in the Western canon, it's true in the Eastern canon. I would be very interested to learn about what happened in Africa, because I know there's not a lot of written history on it, but I'm sure there's a oral history. I would learn to love some of it. You have to care about your warrior caste. You don't need to make heroes out of them, because we can look and see that every society that has had too much soldier worship has been incredibly bellicose and ripped itself apart with eternal warfare. But you have to care about it to a certain extent, because there's so many psychological and social reasons that go into it. It's immense, all the way from, okay, even if you're just totally opposed to being violent ever for any reason, history kind of dictates that young men with nothing better to do will find weapons and be violent. If you give them something better to do, like a profession of arms, and you make them a protector of something instead of a destroyer of something, then you have a bunch of protectors. And then if you create a governmental system around keeping them in check unless somebody attacks first, hey, what isn't it weird that despite the fact that everything's so crazy right now in the world, the fewest number of people are actively engaged in warfare as have ever existed in all of human history? We have the least warfare in human history now that we've developed this system. How crazy is that? So it makes society more peaceful to care about your military over the long run. You get more social benefits out of it. There's a saying that the military leads and society follows. There's a lot of social progress right now to care more about people who are disabled. I know in the 90s and early 2000s, no one cared. No one cared at all. And then you have to care about the troops, and then we have 20 plus years, a whole generation of troops getting blown up, getting, traumatic brain injuries, losing limbs, becoming, emotionally and mentally ill because of various things, and having mental health problems and emotional health problems. And that has fed into the support, not just from a social aspect of it, but like people care, and the government cares, and they threw money at that research. There are so many mental health treatments, physical therapy treatments, burn treatments, various types of surgeries. There's new advancements in prosthetics that never would have happened had we not cared about the military. And it's one of those messed up paradoxes of being a human being, that so much positivity had to come out of so much destruction. But that's what happens. If you don't care about the military at all, like in Vietnam, post-Vietnam, we got nothing from Vietnam. We got 55,000 dead young men. Communism spread anyway, and then we had to spend 30 years changing people's attitudes about the military. We got nothing out of it. It was a total L for everybody involved in the United States, because no one cared.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, you know, going back, that's the part that I'm afraid of, right? Is that we went from caring too much.
Mm-hmm.
We created this unstable system in our society of how we're dishing out this currency.
Mm-hmm.
And the overcorrection might be might take a lot of us by surprise. When people are like, fuck you, I don't care, right? Like when it goes from thank you to your service to fuck you, baby killer, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, right? And if we know anything about society, we know that things usually, the pendulum eventually swings back, and we'll see.
Yeah.
But shit, man,
Yeah.
we're at time, so Memorial Day weekend, if the weather's nice by you, make sure you get out there. Make sure you barbecue, have a beer, pour one out for the homies. Do what you got to do. Have a great time. Is there anything you wanted to leave the folks with?
Happy Memorial Day weekend. Remember what it's for. Remember it's supposed to be bigger than us individually. Don't get so caught up in thinking about whether or not it affects you, and think about the other people and perhaps even your kids and grandkids and all this stuff to come, because that's really what it's about.
Yeah. And if you're a bro vet expecting free things, I got to tell you, man, plate of ribs isn't worth your dignity. So that's all we have, folks. We'll catch you all later. Peace.